Hello friends, I'm Rosa. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are completely new here. So we are doing my June wrap up, even though this video is quite late. I like to do these usually at the start of the month. I've just been insanely busy. So I've not really had the chance to sit down and fully reflect on everything that I've read last month yet, but we're doing that today. I'm excited. I think I read about 8 books last month and it was a really good reading month. It's kind of a reply to a video that I did almost a year. Dang, take it slow. Last month, because I did ask you guys for your favorite books because I wanted to read them in June. So you can check out that video. It's linked in one of the corners. I didn't manage to read all the books in that video, all the books that I talked about in that video, because I actually ended up spending a lot of my free time last month kind of getting completely lost in Elden Ring, the video game. If you didn't know, George R.R. Martin, who wrote The Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, actually had a hand in the story that's kind of not really full on told, but the lore behind the game. So it's been very exciting to kind of delve into that. It's been kind of like reading a book, to be honest, but like having to find all the chapters yourself. So I've been as a nerd, as a gamer nerd, if you will, and a book nerd, I've been having a good time with that. But that definitely took up like at least 3-4 books I could have read. Oh, I also want to mention that I am still working my way through The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which I mentioned in my TBR video for July, and this is great. I'm just taking my time with it because I feel like that's the way to, for me at least, to go through this book. I just have to take my time with it. So far, I think I'm like 30% into it. You can see the way that I've tapped so far, and it's so good. But there are certain things mentioned in this, like certain events, the words that they used to describe, or like the names they'd given the events, were the same names as some of the events happening in Elden Ring. So I got a little bit confused for a moment there, and I had to put this on pause. But we're back in it, and it's such a good book. I won't fully talk about it in this video because I'm not done reading it, but once I am, I'll give you the full rundown. It's great though. It's great. Thank you for suggesting that to me, or thank you for finally making me read it. I've kind of had it on my shelves for half a year since my birthday because I got it for my birthday, so it was about time. But as for the 8 books that I did finish, I also did not manage to finish the Atlas 6 as I'm recording this video, but I'm very close to finishing it. So I'll include it for those of you who are a part of the book club. I'll include it in next month's wrap up, which will probably be out in like 3 weeks from now. But I did finish Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which was my book club's secondary pick. So if you want to check out the book club, by the way, we are reading Book of Night here in July, which I'm excited for. I'm excited to get started with it, and I will be covering that book in a book club exclusive vlog. So if you want to check that out, there's a link to it at the top of the description box. But Skyward, thank you for picking this because oh my gosh, did I end up loving this so much. I read this before I started with The Way of Kings as well, and I think it was good that I did because it kind of, even though this is young adult sci-fi, whereas The Way of Kings is adult high fantasy, I think for me personally it was a good way to kind of ease into Brandon Sanderson's, not necessarily writing because it's vastly different in the 2 books, although you can tell that he's like, at least to me, he seems like a good writer. It's definitely, I don't want to say thinned down, but it's lighter in this one than it is in The Way of Kings, as it should be because it's a young adult book. But you do get kind of an idea of how he relates information to you, which I vibe with very well. I liked it. There were a lot of moments in this with a lot of like, because we follow Spencer, who, I should probably tell you what this book is about, right? Before I get started with all the nitty gritty. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. So we follow Spencer, who is a teen girl, and she lives on a different planet, by the way. I think that's an important factor to note. And she dreams of being a pilot because the planet that she lives on, they have these like small areas where humans are living, and they're constantly under threat by the Krell that are attacking, so they're aliens that are attacking them. They're flying through this like hole in the sky and they're just coming in and killing people, killing humans. So they're always in need of new pilots to defend themselves from these Krell. However, when Spensa was a kid, her father actually was one of the pilots that were fighting against the Krill. Unfortunately, something happened to him under one of the attacks, and it kind of led to him being marked as, what is the word that they call? Not, is it a traitor? I think it might be a traitor, or like a coward. Yeah, coward or traitor. I don't remember exactly which word it is that they use. But because of that, she has to fight to be able to go to school with everyone, this pilot school that she wants to attend, because they don't want her there. They think she has the same kind of coward, traitor gene as her dad did, and they just don't want to accept her to the school. So she has to fight for her spot there. She has to take care of herself and basically live on her own and everything. And there's a lot of stuff other than that. A lot of information. It's the first in what I think is currently a trilogy, but it'll be more than that. I think there's a 4th book coming out next year, possibly. I don't remember exactly what his publication schedule is, but he has quite a lot going on, if I may say so. It actually, if you think about it, it's actually quite impressive. Like, how does a man write that many words? I don't get it. Like, I can barely read 10 a day. Or, I mean, ignore that. I definitely read more than 10 words a day. I mean, like, write. Completely messed that up. Moving on. But yeah, he has quite a lot of series going on right now, so I think what's the next one called? I think it's called Defiant. I think that might be, or am I mixing it up with, is it not called Defiant? It's fine. It's fine. There's a 4th book coming out at some point, is my point. I just don't remember what it's called. It's, everything's fine. But so far, there are 3 books out, and I have the other 2. I want to read them. There's even like a novel collection that I want to read. A novella collection, it's not a novel collection. A short stories collection with some of the characters that are in this book as well that I'm like dying to read as well now. It's so good. Spensa is such a great character. She's like, I've spoken about this before, but I really enjoy female characters that want something and then just like go for it. I respect that so much. Whether they're girls, teen girls, or adults, I just respect it so much. Like, I wish, truly wish that I had that trait myself. I think, like, I really, yeah. I respect it so much. So without stepping on other people, just want to point that out. Like, without tearing down other people, unless they deserve it. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Now, you don't want to step on other people unless they're like bullies or something to get what you want. Like, unless they're truly terrible people, you don't want to do that. But Spensa just, I have so much respect for everything she's going through and still manages to keep her chin up and not listen to people when they are mean to her and when they whisper behind her back, because there's a lot of that going on too. Like, Spensa is definitely exposed to a lot of bad stuff. Like, you will feel so sorry for her, but then you'll like be like, oh, but you can handle it though. Like, you are so strong. So some adorable relationships in this one as well. Spensa making friends with people as well is something that I love to see, because she truly deserves to have friends. And the story itself, alright, information dumps. There are no information dumps, and if there are, I didn't notice, because everything's just kind of like nicely woven together. You don't really notice it when they're having classes and suddenly you are learning alongside with them. It just works very well. Like, you have to learn about the way that they use these pilot ships, but also different maneuvers and the story behind the Krill, the story of how did the humans get to this planet. It's the first book in a series. This is my point before, but of course there's a lot of like, you have to somehow get all this information in because it is the first one in a series, so you have to be introduced to everything, but you don't get all this information dumped on you, and I really loved that. It was just nice. I think I hope at least I got my point across. So anyway, moving on to the next book. So I read this as the last book, I think, that month, and it's Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I think I read this so quickly that I don't even fully remember what I thought while reading it, to be honest. Do you guys ever get like that? Like, what was I doing while reading this? I think I just kind of devoured it within a day or something. I am having a very hard time remembering any thoughts I had while reading this book, other than, oh my gosh, what happens next? Or, oh my gosh, I love Jude. Jude is another female character that I have massive respect for, even though she might be a little bit more on the naive side compared to Spensa. But she's another one that's been stepped on by other people, or fae in this situation, I suppose. So not people. But she doesn't fully let it get to her. I mean, of course you do, to a certain point. But she takes it and then turns it into fuel for whatever she wants, you know? So she has something to like drive her to get where she wants. And I respect that. I respect it a lot. We might be touching on some things here that you can probably understand in a second why I respect it a lot. I'll talk a little bit about it, but I don't really want to fully get into it. So that sounds so vague. We'll get to it in a second. But this book is about Jude, her twin sister, and her older sister that have ended up in Fae World. I forgot what the place is called. I'm just gonna go with Fae World. It's fine. So basically what happened was that her older sister, her twin sister and herself are human, but her older sister is actually half Fae, half human. And the human part comes from her mother. Her mother is also Jude and her twin sister's mom. They have a different dad. But then one day, the sister's dad, the Fae, comes back to basically claim the child, to claim Jude's older sister. And something happens. He ends up taking all three sisters and just brings them to the Fae world, where he takes them under his wing and gives them protection and stuff because it's dangerous for humans to live in the Fae world. But fast forward some years, I forgot how many, but some years, 8 years I think it was, or 7 possibly, Jude and her sister, I think her name is Taryn. I could be wrong about that one. I don't like her anyway. I've just kind of purposely forgotten her name because I don't like her, but they go to school now and they have to go to school with all these Fae that are not treating them well. Jude especially is being straight up bullied by a group of Fae that are kind of like higher standing in this community, in this world, or this land. I don't really fully remember. This is the thing. I read it so quickly that I don't fully remember the whole situation. I need to remind myself. Oh, Prince Carden, 6th born to the High King Eldred. We'll talk about him in a second. Oh, the place is just called Fairy. Alright, well, because the man that they, who took them when they're fairy creature. Because he's of a bit of a higher standing as well, they go to all these balls and dances and so on, and they have to go to school with these higher standing Fae as well, and Jude especially is being bullied by this group. One of the Fae in this group is called Carden, and like I just said, he's the 6th born of the High King, and he's a bit of a douche. I mean, the other Fae in this group are definitely douchier, but he's like a douche. I hope I can say that on YouTube. Is that a swear word? You know what? He's a dick. It's fine. But the book is basically, I don't want to full on call it a fantasy romance because I felt like it was a little bit more than that. It was definitely also like royal stuff, like politics, if you will. Like, it kind of surprised me a little bit. I felt like it was a lot darker than I thought it was, but we mainly follow Jude, her sister, and then this group of fairy that are just evil. There's also a guy called Locke who has a part to play as well. We gotta talk about this some extra when I've gone through book 2 and 3. There's a whole thing anyway. But it was so much fun. I will say, as someone who was pretty badly bullied in school, there was a scene where I started having like major flashbacks and I got teary-eyed and I had to basically stop reading for like 5 minutes because I was just like, oh gosh, I can't breathe. So yeah, that was a little bit hard to go through. I've not experienced that in any book before, but the whole situation that Jude had to go through in that scene was a lot. So like, when I say that this group of fairy are mean, I mean it. Evil. Straight up evil. And Carden is definitely not one of my favorite male characters that I've come across, but I think they're gonna have some fun in book 2. It was fun. And like I said, Jude is just, yeah. I like when female characters are being dealt with a certain set of cards, such as them being picked on by everyone, but somehow they don't let them get beaten. Like, they don't just give up because of it. I respect that a lot. And as someone who was bullied, I think you can put 2 and 2 together, like, why? So anyway, loved it. Looking forward to The Wicked King and Queen of Nothing that I'm considering not buying because I have them, but reading in August. I'm not really sure yet. It was lovely though. It was lovely. I feel like I've talked way too much already, so this video is probably gonna end up being like an hour, and I'm sorry. Also, my foot is already sleeping. What's that about? Okay, so quickly, I read 2 books on Kindle, one being Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, which is an adult literary fiction. It was very, very funny. You follow, it's kind of difficult because you follow, oh my gosh, it was a very specific number. Was it like 9 people or something? 7? You follow a specific number of people that, I'm gonna have a very hard time summarizing this, I feel. They're stuck in an apartment that's being sold. So there's an open house in this apartment, and they're stuck in this apartment because there was a robbery across the street at a cashless bank. So the robber didn't get anything out of it and basically fled to this apartment when the people in the bank called the cops, and is now taking everyone in the apartment hostage. And it sounds like a lot, but also I think you can tell the tone for this book from the whole, like, a robber decided to rob a cashless bank. It has a very comedic tone to it throughout the whole thing. You go back and forth in the timeline so much. There are more characters than just the ones in the apartment that you follow as well. You follow 2 of the police officers too. There's also a psychologist that you follow, and it's a whole lot of perspectives, but it's so much fun, and like a whole lot of jumping back and forth, and then suddenly you're on a bridge and someone's jumping, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on. But it was so much fun. I was laughing throughout the whole thing. I've not read any other books by Fredrik Backman before. I do own A Man Called Ove. This name sounds so funny in English. Ove? Anyway, sorry. I do own that book. I have not read it yet. Unfortunately, a friend of mine decided to spoil it. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna read it now. I don't think she thought it through, and she was telling me something that her father had read or had told her because he'd read the book, and she just casually like blurted out the ending, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm not reading that now. Thank you. But this was lovely. This was fun. Definitely makes me feel like I need to check out some other books of his. So if you know any other ones that are good, I've kind of looked into Beartown, but I'm not really sure yet if that's the one I want to go with. But aside from A Man Called Ove, since I now know the ending against my will, let me know if he has any other good books, because it was hilarious. There was just a fun tone to it, and I like the back and forth, to be honest. It was kind of confusing to start out with. When it started the first time, I was like, oh, so this is how we're gonna do things. Okay, this is how we're gonna do this. Okay, well, I better stay focused so I know where we're at in the story, but it was fine. It was fine after a while. And then the other one that I read on Kindle was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, which I thought was gonna hit me a lot harder than it did, to be honest. I also thought it was about something completely different than it was, of course, because it's kind of difficult to tell from her title sometimes. Like, it ends with us. I'm not gonna say what it's about, but the title, I thought it was pointing towards something else than it was, and then when you hear it in the story, you're like, oh, that makes sense now. Yeah, it's like that with Reminders of Him too, I feel. But Reminders of Him, adult contemporary romance. As per usual with Colleen Hoover's books, they are not rom-coms, but there is like an aspect of comedy to it. It's just not a rom-com. There's humor in it, but it definitely is not a focus of the story. You follow... How does it start out? There are 2 timelines in the book. In one timeline, you follow our lead girl. Wait, am I mixing it up with Ugly Love right now? I might be, because I also read that one. Hold on. Hold on a second. Oh my god, I am. I think I've ended up mixing the 2 books together in my head. I don't actually remember if you follow 2 different timelines. I think it might be just the one timeline, but you follow 2 people. So you follow our lead girl who just got out of prison, has returned to her, I'm not sure if it's her childhood, like, home, like town where she grew up, but it was her ex-boyfriend's hometown at least. So his parents still live there, and she's basically there because first of all, she doesn't really know where to go. She was just released from prison. She can't get a job. She doesn't know what to do. All she knows is that she meets her daughter who's in this town. And then she meets our other main character who is a guy. And I'm trying not to say too much because I actually liked experiencing everything as it unfolded in the book, but his role in everything is a very difficult, like he's in a very difficult position at many points throughout the book, and you kind of feel sorry for him, but you also feel sorry for her, and it's like, what's the best way to go about this? I don't know. I was having such a hard time kind of picking sides and stuff, but not that you should always pick sides, because that's BS. Don't always pick sides, but it was definitely interesting to see how they were gonna go about it, because what a situation to be in. But yeah, wow, how did I manage to completely mix the two books together? Someone just flushed 3 times. Are you okay? Anyway, I can hear my neighbors go to the bathroom. It's great. I love knowing my neighbors on this level. But as for the other Colleen Hoover book that I read Ugly Love, which is the one where you follow 2 different timelines. But it's because both of them have something to do with, they share certain elements. I'm not gonna say too much. They share certain elements. I will say the title thing counts for mostly reminders of him, to be honest. Although I would say Ugly Love kind of has the same feel to it. I think it's the Colleen Hoover thing, to be honest, with her titles. It's kind of fun. Except from Slammed. Don't count Slammed. But in Ugly Love, we follow a girl who ends up moving in with, at the start of the book, she moves in with her brother who lives in an apartment building, and he's a pilot. And so he lives in this, I don't really know how this works, if this is a thing in real life, that all these pilots live so close to each other. Is that a thing? Like, are there apartment buildings for pilots and stewardesses and stuff, and stewards? Is that a thing? I've never heard about that. Like, I don't know, but it kind of surprised me as I was reading the book. But he lives among other pilots, and the day that she's supposed to get to the apartment, when she shows up at his door, there's a guy lying outside who's completely wasted. So she finds out that the guy is actually her brother's neighbor, and she promises the brother to take care of him, to make sure that he gets inside so he's not just lying in the hallway, and that's that on that. The next day he's like, did we do stuff? And she's like, no, we most definitely did not, because you're rude. Secretly though, personality-wise, the two of them don't really get along that well, at first maybe, but they want each other so much. He's a very like, I don't do relationships. She's like, I don't have time for relationships. She's reading to be a nurse or a doctor, one of the two, I don't remember exactly which one. But she's like super busy with her studies, so she doesn't have time for relationships. So they're like, well, we could, just start having fun instead. We don't have to be in a relationship. We don't even like each other. Let's just have some fun in our free time. They're on the same page, kind of, not really. And because of this whole situation, it kinda, I don't want to phrase this. Unfortunately for them, or fortunately, I'm not really sure how to put this, but the situation is it turns out to be a difficult to be in for both of them. There are certain things from his background that are kind of threatening to resurface, and he's very closed off, doesn't really want to talk about it, and she's like, I kind of want to talk about it, so that's a whole thing. And yeah, that's why it's called Ugly Love. I don't really know why I've heard a lot of people that don't like this because they say it's toxic. I mean, I get it to a certain degree. It's not my favorite Colleen Hoover book that I've read. There were certain points to it where I was just kind of like, I would have given up at this point, I think. I would have maybe tried to protect myself a little bit more. I'm trying not to say too much about it, to be honest, but I wouldn't say that it's like super toxic, but it's definitely not innocent either. So I don't know, but definitely not my favorite Colleen Hoover book. I enjoyed Reminders of Him a little bit more than this one. Reminders of Him was actually super sad. I mean, this one is as well. This is super sad. Okay, I feel like sadness-wise, I don't really know which one to go with. They're both super sad, like punch you in the gut kind of super sad. Colleen Hoover, man, what are you doing? Okay, we have 3 more books to talk about, and I've been talking for like 40 minutes, so let's get to it. First off, I want to talk about Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which is the first book in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. It's a very long title. Like, what's that about? This is middle grade fantasy, urban fantasy, and Greek mythology. We got some Greek gods in there. A lot of them. We have like other creatures and characters that you've seen throughout Greek mythology tellings, and that aspect to it was actually really fun. So I don't think I have to tell you what this is about because I have a feeling that I'm the last person on the planet to read this. When I say like children's books in Denmark, I don't think Percy Jackson is necessarily the biggest franchise. I think a certain Glassed guy might have been the bigger franchise, but I never read this as a kid, so like this is my first time going through it. Yeah. I liked it a lot. I do have a question though. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that after I say what it's about, because I will tell you. Even though you already know, I'll still tell you. So in this book, we follow Percy Jackson. Percy is Jackson. And I think I'm okay telling you that he's basically Poseidon's kid, right? Like, that's not a secret, is it? You learn that pretty early on anyway. Did I just spoil the book? No. He's a half god, half human. He ends up, after some things happen, because... Okay, listen. Percy is not necessarily a troubled kid, at least not because of himself. Like, he's not at fault for this. He has dyslexia, he has ADHD, so he's not having an easy time in school. The teachers are after him. Suddenly there are Greek creatures attacking him in school as well. So, like, things are not really going that well for him in school. He's having a hard time, and again, it's not his fault. But one thing happens, and he finds himself kind of having to flee his home with his mom. He ends up at this place called Half-Blood Camp where there's other Greek god kids and some other characters that I'm not going to mention. Figure it out yourself. Like, learn them yourself. I'm not going to tell you who they are. I think you should discover that for yourself. But he is sent off after certain things happen. He's sent off on a quest, a hero's quest, because he has to retrieve Zeus's lightning bolt, which has been stolen. And for some reason that lies on Percy. He's like 12. Like, what are you doing? Dude, go get it yourself. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what that's about. It's an adventure as well. And it was fun. It was fun. I liked the characters' chemistry a lot. I liked following the three people because we do follow Percy, but he's on this adventure, this quest with two other people. One is Grover, who's not necessarily a person. He's a, what's it called? Satyr? Satyr? Not really sure how to pronounce that, but he's like half goat or full-on goat. He's not full-on goat because they can't talk, but you know those goat people? He's one of those, okay. And we also have Annabeth, who is the daughter of Athena. So in that way, it was a lot of fun. I like the three characters together. I do want to revisit this series at some point. I do have a question though, like this feels weird. Why are the Greek gods suddenly in the US? Like, why do they choose to live in the US? I feel like this is just my personal opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're Greek and you don't agree with me, please let me know. But I feel like the Greek gods would not settle down in the US. I don't know. I know it's just a book. It's a children's book, but like that in itself felt like I just had this huge like, why? Like you could have easily somehow ended up in Greece, you know? I don't think the Greek gods would move from Greece. Just like I now own, you can't see it because I think it's up here, but I have the first Magnus Chase book and I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be the son of Thor, and I'm pretty sure the Norse gods have also settled down in the US, which as a Norse person, they wouldn't do that. It just, that whole thing kind of felt funny to me, like, why? But aside from that, it was fun. I felt like maybe the gods could have been a little bit meaner because if you know anything about mythology back then, both Greek but also Norse, the gods were not nice. So they didn't actually full on like people, humans. They were not nice to them. So they were kind of, let's revisit the word, they were dicks. So, you know, that's the thing. They could have been a little bit meaner in this book as well. I do know it's a children's book. I do know, you don't have to remind me. Second last book that I'm going to talk about is Graceling by Kristin Cashore. This is young adult fantasy. We follow a girl who, I actually got my question answered because on the back it says she has the grace, which is basically a power, and she has the grace of killing. And that is so unspecific, like how does she kill? But she's good with weapons. She's good at fighting, so that's her grace. And graces in this world is basically something that some people are born with. They can manifest in different ways. Some people are really good at climbing trees. Some people are magnificent at painting. Some are amazing musicians. Some are very good at fighting. Some are good at killing. Like, that's better than fighting. I mean, depending on the way you look at it, I suppose. And some of them are good at aiming with bows and arrows. You know, they just manifest in different ways, but it's not everyone who's born with a grace. The girl that we follow, Katsa, though, is, and hers is that she's good at killing. This also means that she basically, I think he's actually related to her, but oftentimes a lot of the children that are born with graces that have higher value, if you will, in this society, they're taken under the wing of the different leaders of the worlds in this universe. So she is actually under the king's service or something, so she's sent off on different missions from him. I'm pretty sure he's the king. I think it's the king. But I also think they're somehow related. Don't really remember how that works. But anyway, for some reason, I'm having a very hard time remembering how exactly she comes across this case, but there's the kidnapping, and she comes across this kidnapping, and she decides to investigate because, you know, she's a graced fighter, killer, and she's not afraid. She's very defiant. But there's a guy as well who turns up at the palace that she's at, and he is graced with fighting. So the two of them start fighting each other a lot on purpose. Like, they choose to, as training, they basically beat each other up for fun. They also grow closer to each other by having all this fun fighting each other, and Katsa decides that she doesn't actually want to kill anymore. There's some other stuff going on in this kingdom, and I don't even know how to touch on that without spoiling anything, so I'm not going to. But it's definitely something that's a little bit more threatening than just a kidnapping that's easily solved by saving the person who was kidnapped. So there's more to it than just the kidnapping. The kidnapping is a very small part of this. There's like something big looming, big and evil looming in this world. And Katsa will of course play a part in it. I just butchered that synopsis completely. This was fun though. I again adore Katsa as a character. I actually named one of my new characters in Elden Ring after her because I thought she was awesome. She's one of those girls who again is not necessarily picked on by everyone because they don't dare pick on her, but she's definitely trash talked. Like, people talk about her behind her back, and she's feared by everyone, and she doesn't like it, but she doesn't let it defeat her. She knows what she wants, and she fights for it, and I respect that so much. Their relationship evolving throughout the book as well was a lot of fun to follow as well, and they had great chemistry as well, them fighting each other and kind of figuring things out and stuff. That was a lot of fun to follow, so I enjoyed this quite a lot. Can't wait to get into Fire. Have been considering getting Bitter Blue as well, but I do own Fire already, so I've started like 4 extra series this month. No, wait, 5. My goal for this year was to finish series, not start them. Anyway, we got one more book to talk about, and that is The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater, or Vater. I don't know how to pronounce her last name still. And this was interesting. So this is a young adult fantasy. It's set in, I think it's supposed to be Wales, or like something inspired by Wales. Because I think the creatures, the horses, are from old Welsh stories. Oh, it could be Irish or Scottish too, I suppose. If you know Kelpies, they're basically those kinds of horses. So in this book though, we follow a girl who has lost her parents. She has 2 brothers. I think one is a younger brother, but I could be wrong about that. They definitely have an older brother who's like, one day I'm gonna leave for the mainland, goodbye. And she's like, don't go. I'm gonna enter the Scorpio Races, so give me until after the Scorpio Races, and then you can leave. The Scorpio Races are basically, it's a race. It takes place in either October or November, but it's like wintry months. And everyone who joins the race usually rides on one of these kapelushkas, one of the kelpies, that are seahorses that eat humans and not just humans, also sheep and goats and other horses and stuff. Like, they're very evil. Or not evil, but like, cause like, are bears evil? They eat everything too, you know? Are lions evil? I don't think so. You're disturbing creatures of the sea. That's basically what you're doing. Would you call a whale evil? I'm only correcting myself right now. I realized this because I just called the horses evil. Anyway, correction, they're not evil. They're just horses from the sea that eat other people, not people and other animals. So yeah, but humans take them from the sea, they capture them and then use them in this race. And she wants to partake in the race so that she can earn money. She wants to win it so that she can basically talk her brother into not leaving, because everyone leaves them. Her and her other brother, the parents are gone. They've died in these races before. And it's a whole lot of, like, there's a whole lot of sadness in this book, to be honest. So we also follow a guy who has joined the races a couple of times and he's basically won every time. He has his favorite horse, whose name I forgot, but it's very red. I think it's a she. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. But it's a very red horse. And they win every race. The two of them meet. He helps her out with some stuff. And, you know, there might be something blooming there as well. They partake in the races and everything. And I think this book is mainly about, like, for me, it's not so much about the story per se, because I think you could sum up the story pretty quickly, like the whole story. It was for me more about like atmosphere and learning about this place and the characters as well, and just atmosphere and vibe and mood, basically. It was very beautifully written in that way. Oh, this is why it's difficult to figure out if it's October or November. It's the 1st of November. But yeah, I had a fun time reading something that's not necessarily set in... It's like fantasy worlds, there's a lot of those, but this is more set in something that looks like it's actually a real life place, because it's so closely based off of like actual culture somewhere, apart from the whole like doing a race where they have meat-eating horses. But it's like, apart from that, there are still places where they've lived like this, like they have here, and I think that is interesting, just like being transformed or transported to a place that's completely different than the one that I live in. So I enjoyed it that way. I enjoyed learning a little bit about the Kapelushkas as well. Because I don't know if you know, but in close to where I lived in Scotland, because I lived there for a while, they actually had these two big horse sculptures that were called the Kelpies, or that are called the Kelpies. And I never knew what they were. I was just kind of taken there and they're like, do you want to see the Kelpies? And I'm like, what are Kelpies? I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then you get there and they're horses, and I'm like, why didn't you just call them horses? And they're like, they're Kelpies. And I'm still like, I only see 2 horse heads. No one explained what a Kelpie was. So it was fun actually getting that answered. Yeah, anyway, it was funny getting that answered. So, but it was beautiful. I don't think I did the summary justice in this one either, but it was very just like beautifully written. I think summaries for those kinds of books, it's like a Strange the Dreamer sort of situation where you wanna like convince people to read the book, but the best way to go about that is by telling them like, oh, this is what the story is about, but then you kind of end up short because that's not why you should read those books. It's not necessarily full on for the stories, it's more like for vibes, if you will. And the Scorpio Races is definitely one of those books. So I hope I made my point. I hope that I got it across, or like that you understood it. So anyway, if you got any questions, let me know. If you've read any of these books, also let me know. Share your opinions in the comments. If you're still watching this video, leave a horse emoji. I'm sure there's one of those, right? If there's not, then leave a wave, like one of those wave emojis. Also let me know your other favorite books. I had a lot on my list and these were the only ones that I got to read. I'm still totally bummed out that I haven't read Gideon the Ninth yet, but I will read it. I might possibly take it on this month instead. So that was the whole thing, but I hope you enjoyed this wrap-up video. I'm sorry for ranting so much. I like to rant. I hope you enjoyed the rants. If you don't, I apologize. But that's all I got for you guys today. You can find links to all of the books in the description box down below. I always link them on both US Amazon and also book depositories, so if you want to check any of them out, you can do that on or through those links. If you want to follow or add me as a friend on Goodreads, there's a link to my profile in the pinned comment and you can also find a link to my book club in the pinned comment as well. But that is all I got for you guys today, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you want more videos like this, or bookish unboxings, 24-hour readathons, weekly vlogs, TBR videos, and other videos that include talking about books, definitely consider sticking around by clicking on the subscribe button. But I'm gonna leave you now, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye.
Oh, you know you're beautiful, and it's like